Oops. Okay, question 2. What was easy to understand and what was difficult in relation to social and cultural context and issues?
It is important. It's understandable how she reacts to stuff. As in the beginning, she's very gullible. She's easily believing everything she hears, and as it goes on, it's more easy how she turns. She still believes in everything, but she actually takes caution for actually doing it. It's easy to understand that, but what it wasn't that easy to understand was that why would Marty want to liberate herself from her own family? What does that have to do with anything?
Okay. You may comment on what she says. Dominic?
I agree with what her is saying, how her reaction to things makes sense because we've all been there, we've all been children, we've all been gullible. And I think I don't necessarily think she wants to liberate herself from her family, but we all go through that teenage phase where you have to rebel against whoever's in charge because you feel you know more, you're correct. So I don't think she's I don't think she sees it as rebellion against her family. She just sees it as freeing herself from this little oppression that her mom's putting on her. If that makes any sense.
Kind of we all want to be independent.
Yeah.
We don't want people to tell us what we can and can't do. Yeah, it's adolescent development. I guess I completely agree with Valentina. it's not her rebelling against. Okay, number one, I think it's she's rebelling just as a teenager, and number two, she wants, I think, to give herself a kind of sense of self-importance, so she rebels by smoking and drinking wine. So that's she's not only rebelling as a teenager, she's also trying to rebel as a victim of the Islamic regime.
Well, the way I saw it was I feel like she's kind of rebelling against the regime within her own family, the things she can rebel against. She has that kind of she has an incentive to rebel, but she can't exactly go out and protest alone, rebel against what's actually happening. So the only way she can do it is within her own household.
Is there any mirroring going on between the revolution in the country and her personal revolution?
Yeah.
Well,
Go for it.
Okay, so with the questions we asked yesterday about specifically cigarette and wine, how the wine was kind of the chapter about wine was specifically rebelling against the revolution, right? And it's something that you're not supposed to do, kind of, and they don't want you to do, and so it's rebelling against it. While cigarette is talking about her using as well another material as rebelling against her own family. And it's kind of there's a mirror between that because the cigarette represents her own rebellion against her parents, while the wine represents her family's rebellion against the government.
I find it easy to understand the importance of religion because we see this throughout history and also in Antigone we saw that. So it makes sense to me.
What was easy was the whole idea of the country rebelling, because it's not just within Iran that this would have happened, everyone can all relate to it. If anything that happened to him, you guys' countries, the people would react the same.
One thing which I thought, this is unrelated from this, one thing which I thought was easy to understand was Margie's social class, because I think as readers, all of us rank high in socioeconomic classes, and Margie does as well. And obviously the tension between the social classes are introduced, and I think I don't know, we've all experienced it as well, where we're aware of our privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Magda because as we can tell with Mary, there's a very noticeable different level of social classes, and I think we can still see it today in today's life in some countries, and also if you're from a social class that is rich and I don't know, you want to
when I have friends from other classes, it's very hard to like admit it and like show your personal, your society that you have with those from different classes.
I was just going to say that I found it easier to understand. I found it easy to understand the motivations of the parents who send their kids away, because even now with a lot of refugee crises which are going on, people are moving away from the terrors of war. And it kind of related to your question as well, but I found it easy to understand that because of what's going on now. But I found it a bit hard to understand the true feeling of Margie. You can see it in the book, you can see her expressions, but she get for example, when her dad just gets her a poster of the Western band, but she's overjoyed with just a simple poster. You won't really understand it unless you're facing the depression, in her case from prior to this revolution to the present or to their time. And yes, I can see her emotions, but you can't really understand them.
Rounding up the shortages, it's easy to understand why the parents why those children were sent away, because they were sent to have a better life. And I kind of see why the parents would have wanted to stay. I think it's not just because they wanted to be a part of, because it was home, but it was also because it was their country and it was your own kind of national pride. And so I think they just wanted to stay, and I know that happens a lot in a lot of countries. With all these problems going around the world with all the refugees and with all the wars that have happened over the years, even in Ukraine when I was there. So a lot of the times the young kids would try to leave, while the parents and the older people would stay, just so that they can stay and be a part of the country and fight.
I was just gonna say the same issue. It's hard to understand her exact emotions unless you've been through the same thing. Otherwise, you won't know the true feeling that she's trying to express.
So, because it's tough because nobody knows. I don't think any one of us have experienced having to leave your country where you grew up. And Margie and her family were tight, and
Great facial expressions over there.
well, if you have, at least you were with your parents, right? And
Wait, what?
You weren't sent out by yourself.
yeah, and you didn't have to go to a completely new environment as in Austria, where
Here's a question: has anybody been sent out away from their parents to live independently? Okay.
Well, I think we can all relate to leaving your hometown, but that doesn't mean exactly leaving without your parents. But we can all understand leaving your hometown and going to a different culture.
And leaving everything you kind of built behind.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand what you guys are saying, but I'm not really understanding, because I think you guys are tapping into the point when he says you didn't have to go through that. But for me, my parents went to France, and then I was in England, and then they came to England, and then they went to Dubai, and then I came the overlapping between me and both of my parents together was a year for the whole of my life, and then with one of them it was more than that. So could you explain it to me a little bit better?
basically, since we haven't had to go through that, we wouldn't understand it as much as Margie or you did. So if the question is, what's difficult to understand, that would be one, because we hear about, we have friends that have gone through it, and probably our parents also have to go through it as well, but unless you've actually had to do it yourself, then it's difficult to understand.
Especially to do it at such a young age, too.
Maybe you can relate to her because you've been through that, but since none of us have really had to do that, we couldn't really exactly understand.
Also, living through the war, I'm not sure if any of you have lived in the area of the war, but the scene where Margie's area where she lived was bombed, and then the scene where mom was still alive. Obviously, you can see the expressions, you can kind of feel them, but you can't really feel them unless you've actually experienced or seen close friends who have gone through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet there are people in here who have experienced